So let's talk about Elpis. What is Elpis? What is this new virus in Resident Evil 9 that both Grace and Leon are going to fight against? We don't know much about exactly what Elpis is and what the intention of Elpis is going to be in terms of like the grand scheme of whoever the villain is, whether it be Dr. Gideon or somebody else or on a higher power. What we do know about Elpis is that it's a new form, a new virus that is created by a man named Dr. Gideon, a former scientist of Umbrella, even back then during the 1998 Raccoon City incident, and has worked with Umbrella until its essential destruction, and then in secret has been developing this virus known as Elpis. What we do know about Elpis, just based off of what we've seen from the trailers, from everything else that Capcom has released in concerns of Resident Evil 9, is that it's some sort of virus that turns people into zombies or some sort of monsters. And one of the key factors is this black scarring that appears on a person's body the moment they are infected with it. We see that with Leon if you look and take a closer look at the neck, you see like this black scarring that he develops. We also see a photo on a computer that shows black scarring on someone's hands, and essentially that is one of the signifying features of the Elpis virus. What we also know is that Grace's blood, or Grace herself, is super important to Dr. Gideon and Elpis. So who knows what exactly Grace's blood or who she is and how it's going to affect Elpis in some sort of way. Maybe it requires her blood to complete some sort of puzzle that would really make Elpis like the bona fide virus or most powerful BOW weapon that Gideon could make. Other than that, we don't know much about exactly what the Elpis virus is. So in this video, I want to go over just what kind of viruses we have seen already in Resident Evil and how we can connect them to the Elpis virus, because all the viruses that have come from most of the mainline Resident Evil games are all connected in some sort of way with whatever brand new virus comes out in a future Resident Evil game. So I want to go over them just briefly a bit and then try to make a connection to what Elpis could possibly be. So first, let's go over briefly all the viruses from the mainline Resident Evil games that we have encountered. I'm not going to really go into the viruses that you see in Code Veronica, like the T Abyss virus, or T Veronica virus, or even something from the Resident Evil Revelation spin-offs, because as much as I think they are also connected in some sort of way with the viruses that appear in the mainline games, I think it's more important, or I would say it's more valuable to know about the mainline Resident Evil viruses and how they connect to the Elpis virus, and have us at least understand what that virus could essentially be. So let's first start off by talking about the progenitor virus, which was a virus found in flowers in Africa. It was discovered by Oswald D. Spencer as well as others to then be used as some sort of bioweapon, because at the end of the day, what Spencer E. Oswald wanted out of the progenitor virus is to find a way for him to become immortal, for him to not die. So from that, the T virus was created in Resident Evil 1. The T virus, also known as the Tyrant virus, was used to create bioweapons, turn people into zombies. And that's what happened in the mansion until it broke out into Raccoon City. During Resident Evil 2, we find out that the G virus was being created by William Birkin, who was trying to create a much more powerful version of the T virus to be used on any of their enemies or anyone who wants to buy, the virus, to be used against in some sort of nefarious way and create this unstoppable monster. Then we move on to Resident Evil 3, and now we have Nemesis. Nemesis is a combination of both the T virus, the G virus, as well as a parasite. The parasite is used for Nemesis to create him to have some sort of ability to speak and have the ability to use weapons, the ability to, on command by somebody, to go after something or whatever the task wanted them to be. They're not just some, brain dead monster just goes out and does whatever they want. Nemesis had been programmed to take command over by someone, which he does by trying to eliminate all the star members. Then we move on to Resident Evil 4, Las Plagas. Las Plagas is a parasite. It's probably, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the same parasite that was used on Nemesis. It was a sample of a parasite that Umbrella found with Las Plagas and used it on Nemesis. In Resident Evil 4, we find out about Las Plagas, this parasite that is used by Sadler to infect the villagers, to infect the people in the castle, and even on the island. With Las Plagas, he's able able to essentially create a cult. He's essentially able to connect with the people infected by it and using them, commanding them to do whatever it is that he wanted, which was to capture the president's daughter to then use her as blackmail, or send her off back to her father, who she will then infect and then start a whole, Las Plagas infection within the United States that he can then take over and control. Then we move on to Resident Evil 5 with Wesker and Ouroboros virus. Ouroboros is a combination of not only Las Plagas, but the progenitor virus and something else that Wesker created to create this perfect virus for him to use and essentially rule the world as a god. And that's what he wanted to do, and that's what Ouroboros was always going to be for Wesker. Then Resident Evil 6 comes out, and Resident Evil 6 has something called the C virus. What the C virus essentially does is that it creates horrible mutated monsters, but they're mostly just still basic zombies. They're just able to use weapons. What happens with the C virus is that it was used to not only kill the president of the United States, but also really do a lot of damage to China and many other places around the world. Wesker's son, Jake, was able to have the antibody so that the C virus was essentially eliminated based off his own antibodies. Then Resident Evil 7 comes out. Resident Evil 7 introduces something else. It wasn't a Las Plagas, it wasn't like the progenitor virus or any sort of like virus that we have known so far. It is created from this mold that has grown on Earth. I'm not exactly, or don't remember what happened to the mold that caused this, but whatever it did, it created monsters that at least had regeneration and had some sort of consciousness within the mold itself. In Resident Evil Village, we find out that we can go inside the consciousness of people infected by the mold, and it allows them to see the consciousness of every single person who has ever been infected by the mold in like this little hub, or like this area within the mold. And we see that with Ethan going to see Evelyn, and then eventually Rose going to see Ethan, Evelyn, and even Mother Miranda. Now, these are all the mainline Resident Evil viruses, infections, parasites, mold that we have encountered so far in the mainline games. So let's connect them all into what Elpis could be. Elpis, as we progress through each Resident Evil game, is going to be a higher form of a virus from all the viruses, parasites, and even mold that we have encountered so far. It seems that based off the trailer where we see zombies pick up weapons, we see zombies having some sort of like continuous connection to what they were prior, where they're slamming their head on the mirror glass, and like using chainsaws more efficiently, like using all these weapons. It seems like it's a combination of an upgraded form of not only the C virus, but every single virus that comes beforehand. We see Dr. Gideon be infected, or at least go so far into whatever this Elpis virus is that he looks just horrendous. And then we have the Mama monster that we see in the demo of Grace running away from. This Mama monster looks freakishly huge and looks terrifying. But it seems like it's a form of the virus that is highly advanced. And I think, from my own personal belief, my own personal theory, is that the Elpis virus is a combination of every single other virus that we have experienced. The T virus, the G virus, the parasites, Ouroboros, the mold, all of that is being implemented into Elpis. And the reason why I think so is, like I said before, the viruses are all just slowly getting upgraded as the mainline Resident Evils go. Dr. Gideon has been studying and experimenting with people with multitude of viruses throughout his entire freaking life as a doctor, or as a scientist, I should say. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Dr. Gideon, or Dr. G, because I hate saying his name, is going to essentially use every single other virus that we have encountered so far and transform it into and mutate it into this Elpis virus. Viruses in general mutate constantly, kind of like the flu virus. The flu virus never goes away. You cannot cure the flu virus because it constantly mutates. We currently don't have the medical technology to get rid of the flu virus forever, but it constantly mutates. While the flu virus mutates every year, it takes a little bit much longer for it to really change that drastically. But of course, these aren't the same as the flu virus because the virus is constantly experimented on. It's constantly being given something else, whether it's the mold, whether it's this, whether it's that, and it continues to mutate because of us, because we are bioengineering this. By us, I mean humans, and whatever Dr. G is. And so, Elpis is likely a mutated form of a bunch of these viruses put together into one. Because I guarantee you, Dr. G definitely had some resources where he's gotten a hand or a handful of a lot of these other viruses that have been in the mainline Resident Evil games. And the reason why I also suspect it to be the case is that we know, or at least we see, that Leon is infected by Elpis. We see the black scarring on his neck. What's surprising is that he hasn't been infected yet, or hasn't totally lost control. Now, the reason why I think that, and why he hasn't lost control instantly like many other victims will probably will, is because it has some sort of Las Plagas in it. And because Leon was infected with Las Plagas, more than likely his body created some sort of antibodies to protect himself from Las Plagas if it ever got, if he ever got infected by it again. We already know that like Sherry already has the antibodies for the G and the T virus. We know that Jake had the antibodies for the C virus. So it's possible that because Leon is infected and he hasn't turned yet, means that it has some form of Las Plagas that his body is currently fighting against. Now, of course, this could be all just something that happens within the game where he gets like some sort of like depressant, where it holds back the Elpis virus because someone, maybe Rebecca or somebody, created something to hold the virus back so that he could figure out and try to cure himself. But if it's the case that all the viruses from the previous Resident Evil games are being transformed into what Elpis is, it's possible that Las Plagas is involved inside. Elpis, and his body is just fighting against it, which is why it's taking a little longer for him to turn. It doesn't mean that he will be cured of it. It doesn't mean that he won't turn. He will. It's just taking a lot more slower because of that. Or plot, whatever one you want to choose. But that's why I think every single Resident Evil game, every virus from the mainline ones are all being mutated into this one new virus called Elpis. And from this virus, it's creating these new zombies that are able to pick up weapons, similar to the C virus, similar to how Las Plagas was able to make a lot of the villagers use weapons as well. All of this is slowly, I think, from like the mold, from like Las Plagas, where the consciousness of these zombies are slowly becoming, more conscious of what they're doing. And I think that's what Elpis is. It's a combination of every single virus that we have seen so far in the mainline games being implemented into these new zombies, this new virus. We can also make the argument that the BSAA probably had something to do with this nonsense, because we know at the end of Resident Evil 8, the BSAA has been using bioweapons to go on these missions. So who knows what they've been doing, and who knows, maybe at the end of the day, the BSAA is the one who has been funding Dr. G this entire time. But I think that's what Elpis is. At the end of the day, it's a combination of all these viruses, and that's why they're creating these zombies that at least have some sort of consciousness to them. Not to the point where they're still human, but they're able to pick up weapons, they're able to do this and that, and not swing them wildly, but at least use them efficiently. And that's what's going to make Leon's combat going to be very interesting, because they're going to act like at least some small instance of some sort of consciousness to them. And I think that's what Elpis is. We'll see. I can't wait for Resident Evil 9. It's coming out soon. We get the Resident Evil Showcase coming in on Thursday, January 15th, which is 2 days from the time of this recording. So I'm super excited. I can't wait to see more information. Let me know what you guys think is the Elpis virus. And yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my Resident Evil 9 content. All right, bye bye.